narrative we're getting from the US, the UK and everyone else is that there's no ceasefire in Gaza because Hamas reject the ceasefire. That is a blatant lie, isn't it? It's Netanyahu who's rejecting the ceasefire.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know why people don't actually listen to what Netanyahu says consistently, what the rest of his government says consistently, particularly his far-right coalition partners. They will not accept any ceasefire unless on their terms, which are completely unacceptable because their terms involve the complete full military occupation of Gaza. Gaza is already under occupation, was before October, but they intend to put permanent troops back in Gaza. So it's Netanyahu who's making clear he will not accept a ceasefire, and the reason he's able to do that is because our government and the US government refuse to impose meaningful pressure on him. We have had a step this week, the suspension of 10% of the licenses used to sell weapons to Israel, but it's totally inadequate. The government has done that under pressure of this movement because it's been forced to admit those weapons may be used in violations of international law. But despite that admission, it's saying, but we're going to continue to sell other weapons to Israel, including extraordinarily F-35 jet components. This week, NGOs made it clear there was full evidence that F-35 jets were used to commit a massacre against Palestinians in July in Al-Mawasi. 90 Palestinians killed, over 300 injured. So we're calling for a full arms embargo.
Now, Sir Keir Starmer promised before he was elected they would publish the legal advice that the British government had about these arms sales. Where is it?
I know, we haven't seen the publication, but look, what the government's been forced to do is to say, well, we have to suspend these licenses because there is evidence, there is legal advice that meets the threshold that they could be used in violations of international law. Well, then how does that not apply to the other weapons that they're selling? And how on earth can it not apply, as I said, to components for F-35 jets that have been verified? I've not heard the government deny it, the evidence that these were used to commit a massacre in Al-Mawasi in July. So we have to keep the pressure up for a full arms embargo.
Now, can I ask you this? I mean, it'd be wrong to focus on one death of a Westerner, given what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank. But this week we have seen the death, the killing by the IDF of a US citizen, Turkish US citizen. I might be wrong, but I haven't heard a word of condemnation from the US administration about this.
No, and we have had a very robust condemnation from the leader of Turkey. This, as I understand, is a dual Turkish-US citizen. Not a word of condemnation. I think mealy-mouthed words saying we look for Israel to investigate. We know the pattern. This is not the first time that US citizens, UK citizens, have been killed by Israeli forces, and each time we say, well, they'll investigate. Every lesson from history is Israel does not conduct proper investigations and does not take action against those who commit these murders. So this is disgraceful. This is a message that the US people should be picking up. Why do they think it's acceptable for a so-called ally to commit murders of US citizens?
I made this for the Nakba back in May, and I've just made so many of them that I'm handing them out to anybody for them, yes.
And this represents the key to the houses from which the Palestinians fled in 1948.
Yes.
Where have you come from today?
Bristol.
Another Bristolians. We're getting so many Bristolians.
Yeah.
It's heartening to see. I mean, everyone's saying that the feeling in Bristol is good. There's a good alliance in Bristol.
Absolutely.
It's important for everyone to play their part, Muslim or regardless of what faith they come from. It's an opportunity for people to come together. I'm currently in some unfortunate circumstances where I was vocal about my support for Palestine within my advertising agency, and now I'm potentially going through a redundancy. So it's always important, regardless of the consequences, to think back what's important to do in this moment when such injustice is taking place against our Palestinians, brothers and sisters, and all across the world where unfortunately they're suffering from such consequences of colonization.
Why is it that Celtic supporters have got such a connection with Palestine?
It comes from Celtic being set up as a charity by not-for-profit to support an immigrant community in Scotland, and it became about more like social justice as well, and a place for a marginalised community to unite around after a weekend activity, and that's grown to a recognition for and look out for other instances across the world and trying to support other football communities or support marginalised groups, basically.
And also, I mean, it comes from the Irish community in Scotland, and there's obvious parallels between what happened to the Irish and what happened to the Palestinians, isn't there?
Yeah, I think with what happened in the north of Ireland, like there's a lot of history there supporting like POWs and like the awareness and the comparisons drawn between the two of occupation and like fight against sort of militarized occupation that was marginalizing people and stuff like that. It's a bit different in terms of the gravity and now, but there's that history there helps people kind of relate to that more.
This week we saw Kemi Badenoch, one of the contenders for the Conservative leadership, bad-mouthing those people who voted independent, saying they were essentially sectarian, they were violent, etc. How do you react to that?
I really think we have to move on from this name-calling, the nastiness. People have got so tired of that. People who are stepping away from... Take a lesson from that.
It's completely unparliamentary in the first place, and Kemi knows she would never get away with that in the House, on the House floor itself, and would have been severely reprimanded for not treating her fellow MP as an equal. Everybody who gets elected into Parliament is elected on their own stand, and nobody is higher than anybody.
Right, we've seen Keir Starmer restrict some arms sales to Israel. We've seen them restore funding to UNRWA, but we're still selling some arms, crucial arms, to Israel. And we seem to be also joining this blame game of saying it's Hamas, not Netanyahu, who's blocking a ceasefire. What's your assessment so far of Sir Keir Starmer in office?
Considering he's a human rights lawyer, it's appalling. The complicity when it comes to Israel. It's appalling that we're not able to stop all arms to Israel. That is what he should be doing. He should be seeking to ensure that, and to make the argument that if we don't stop these component parts of the F-35s, then it will somehow upset the supply chain. Well, that's good. We want to upset the supply chain. That's the point. We need to stop arming Israel. They're committing a genocide in Gaza. They're committing atrocities in broad daylight. The world can see it. They lie, they lie, they lie. The UK and other governments need to wake up and stop arming Israel. Boycotts, divestment, sanctions. Now we need to reverse everything that the Tories sought to do in their support of Israel.
So every time Israel invade or increase their atrocities and there is some kind of negotiated approach to a peace settlement, every time Israel has blocked progress, every time, way back since I was born, it's always Israel. They will put a proposal that the Palestinians will accept and then they'll change the rules. There was a peace agreement that Hamas agreed to with the Americans over 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, and Israel torpedoed that. Now America had another peace agreement and they're changing the goalposts on a daily, hourly basis. How much can the Palestinians concede to leave them with something that they can live in and rebuild?
Can I ask you this? I mean, we've seen South Africa, joined by other countries, take Israel to the International Court of Justice and win their case. But we're not seeing the kind of solidarity action that South Africa and other countries have shown from Muslim and Arab countries around the world. How do you feel about that?
As a Muslim, it really disappoints me. I don't know the reason. I can't talk for those countries or those governments. I don't work there. I work in the British Parliament and I'm a member of Parliament for the UK. So I would encourage any state, Muslim or non-Muslim, that can make some kind of positive contribution to reduce the killing, to stop the killing, to get justice for the Palestinians, to do everything in their power to do so.
So far, Starmer's government is giving what I call a false generosity. I call it false generosity because they're in a way, trying to camouflage their true support for Israel by throwing crumbs to the Palestinians, by saying we'll re-establish the funding for UNRWA or stop 12 or 10 sort of licenses, exporting licenses after 300, whereas they're providing blanket cover to Israel to continue with its genocide. And we should not accept that, and we should not be fooled by this false generosity by the Labour government.
And we saw in the general election on the 4th of July, we saw 5 independents, including Jeremy Corbyn, elected, and some fantastic, strong votes. I mean, how important was that?
That is pivotal, and I think Keir Starmer's false generosity is based on that, because he realizes that if he doesn't do anything, then the chances are, even all the by-elections that are going to come across before the general election, his position will become very precarious. And the nation, the British people and the public want an end to genocide in Gaza. They want Israel to stop the bombing of Gaza. They want to stop the occupation, and they want our government to act. So if there was democracy in this country, Keir Starmer would take the lead, be a person that he is, and take the voice of the people and tell the Israelis to end the occupation and end the genocide.
Now let's just look across the Atlantic and ask you this. I mean, we've seen Joe Biden step down.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, what do we expect from both either?
Well, I always say when everyone asks about US politicians, is my ambition is when it doesn't matter in Britain anymore who the US president is, because they no longer control our foreign policy, and US imperialism no longer has the world influence that it does. I don't have a vote in an American election, and looking at it, I don't regret that at all.
You're glad of that?
Yes.
It's not much of a choice, is it?
It's not much of a choice. I mean, you know, one can parse it in different ways, but on the matter of Palestine, Trump's position, as we learned when he was president, is unrelentingly pro-Israel, and Harris has to own a Biden policy which has been no different at all. Other issues, perhaps one can parse differences, but I mean, possibly on Ukraine, Donald Trump might give less full-throated support to the continuation of the war. But in the end, as I say, it's an election. I'm glad not to have to worry about how I would cast a vote.
Here, as always, a group of Jews, authentic rabbis, who do not recognize the state of Israel, believe it is against the Torah. These, the brothers and sisters in Israel, have faced repression. They're facing the possibility of the law being changed so they can be conscripted into the IDF. And they're here, children, men, boys, men, to show that they are opposed to Netanyahu and the state of Israel. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of Islam Channel for joining us today. And we'll just come along here. And it's really important that it's a demonstration that not all Jews support the state of Israel, that along with their brothers and sisters, brothers in Israel, as I was saying, are facing repression for opposing the Netanyahu government, who face being conscripted into the army because of the change in the law, but are standing up to Netanyahu and the false prophets, because the Torah, if it's to be followed, does not accept that the state of Israel as it exists can be Israel. So Keir Starmer, the new government, it's ended some arms sales licenses, arms sales to Israel, but it's still selling arms, selling some of the key components to the jets, carrying out attacks on families in Gaza. How do you feel about that?
Well, they've stopped 8% of sales. 8%. That's really not good enough. That leaves another 92% that are still being sold or given to Israel. And it needs to stop. These people are war criminals. No, they think that by making some kind of gesture, they're going to get away with it. These people should be in The Hague. And also, all the other politicians that are complicit. This carries on and on and on, and they can stop it.
I don't know how anyone can sleep watching what's been happening for nearly a year now, and all the excuses everyone makes around the world that they don't like what's happening, or it needs to stop, but they're not actually doing anything that actually is going to stop it. Like even the foreign secretary, he said that he's suspending 30 licenses out of 300 and something. What is the point of 30 licenses? It's just got to stop. We can't just watch this and pretend it's not happening. And if they think that we're going away, we're not. We're not going away. We're going to carry on protesting until they stop and listen. And boycotting, we're going to do endlessly. It's just I can't believe we're still here 10 months later and we're still protesting.
Since then, of course, we've seen the election of a new government. The new Starmer government has restored funding to UNRWA. It has stopped some, I keep saying this, some arms sales to Israel, but not the majority. What hopes do you have in this government?
I'm hopeful. At the same time, I'm a little bit pessimistic, only because I know the reality. I'd like to think that they're going to do a lot more. They've already done some, stopped some of the funding. But it's clear that, you know, if a country is committing plausible genocide, then really we should stop funding them. We should stop supporting them.
I mean, Keir Starmer is a international human rights lawyer. He must know this, surely.
This is a bit baffling, to be honest. To be honest, over the last few years, even with the Conservative government, what's been really disappointing is people who are so-called lawyers and people who should know better. You know, my kids say, hold on a minute, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
And you know, if the kids can see the hypocrisy, then why can't adults, professionals see that?
British-made weapons have poured down on the peoples of Palestine and Lebanon. For 11 months, we, the Global Solidarity Movement, have united in support of the Palestinian people's struggle. Day after day, week after week, we have gathered to send a message so loud that it can be heard in every corner of the world. And after 11 months of genocide, we gather again today with a message for Starmer's government. Our determination to break the murderous connection between our government and Israel's genocide is only growing stronger.
The difference in the value placed on human life globally against the value placed on Palestinian life is very clear for all to see. What is happening in Gaza challenges the very notion of the commitment of Western powers to human rights and dignity. Because what they have been willing to do is not only turn a blind eye, but actively facilitate their ally, Israel, to pursue their foreign policy interests. So this week's announcement from the government may be a step forward, but for the 41,000 plus civilians killed by Israel, supported by the UK, it is too late and it is too little. For those in Gaza now suspending less than 10% of the UK's arms licenses to Israel is simply not enough. All arms and supporting technologies going to Israel to be used against civilians must be stopped.
My friends, 11 months of war crimes, of mass murder, of mass destruction, 11 months of genocide. And here we still are. And Israel still murders with impunity. And the world still watches in horror and in impotence. But my friends, horrendous the last 11 months are. This is not just about the last 11 months. It's about the past 76 years. It is about the last 76 years. It is about a Zionist project that wielded lies like a land without a people for a people without a land. Demanded exclusive ownership over our land, over the land of Palestine. This ultimately resulted in the ethnic cleansing of 2/3 of the Palestinian people from our land, our homes, our farms, our lives in 1948. Ever since, Israel was allowed to act with total, utter impunity. From its illegal military occupation of the rest of Palestine in 1967, through its illegal settlement project, its brutal military suppression, its abhorrent apartheid rule, through it all, Israel has never, ever been held to an account.
You will have seen on Friday that a American-Turkish national, her name was Aysenur Erci Eci. She was a 26-year-old young woman. She was a member of the International Solidarity Movement, mobilized people to go to the West Bank in particular and stand alongside Palestinians to protect them as best they can from the attacks from the settlers and from the Israeli Defense Force. On Friday, she did that. And she was shot in the head. She was taken to the hospital near Nablus, and she died. I want us today to pay tribute to the heroic courage she displayed and to send to her family our deepest sympathy and condolences for what sacrifice she made for peace and for justice for the Palestinian people.
We demand a full arms embargo. We demand an end to all military, political and economic support for Israel's system of oppression. And then, friends, on October the 12th, we want you all back here, not in your hundreds of thousands, but 1 million strong, when we stand in solidarity with our Palestinian brothers and sisters to mark 1 year of their resistance to genocide. Friends, the Palestinian people will never give up their struggle for liberation. Our task remains to stand shoulder to shoulder with them until the day arrives when they enjoy what is their birthright: freedom, justice and equality in their historic homeland. Free, free! Free, free! Free, free! From the river to the sea!